بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the second lesson in the series covering the poem by Imam Ibn al-Nahawi entitled المنفرجة, the opening. And last lesson we covered a little bit of background about Imam Ibn al-Nahawi, talked about his biography a little bit, and we also covered the beginning of the poem, which started off with اشتدي ازمه تنفرجي قد آذن ليلك بالبلج وظلام الليل له سرج حتى يغشاه أبو السرج وسحاب الخير له مطر فإذا جاء الإبان تجي وفوائد مولانا جمل لسروح الانفس والمهج ولها ارج محيا أبدا فاقصد محيا ذاك الارج. And that's where we stopped last time. Beginning of the poem, the beginning of the lesson last time, it sounded like foreign Greek. Hopefully by the end of it you understood what it means. And so if you forgot a little bit of it, you're more than welcome to go back and check that. Before we get into the next section, I wanted to just cover a couple of things about the poem itself. If you go to Istanbul, Turkey, and you go into the Topkapi Palace, the caliph room, the throne room where the caliph used to sit, they actually have the poem written around the wall to surround the throne where the caliph was sitting. And that was just in recognition of the power of this poem, of the openings that people would experience after having recited it, obviously with the right intention. Also, just a reminder, the poem is to get rid of anxiety, number one, and then difficulty, number two. One of the things that I didn't mention about, which is a technical issue about the poem, in Arabic and in poetry there's different metered scales. It's called al-abhur, in the science called al-arud. Al-arud is a science of Arabic language, specifically in poetry, where al-Khalil ibn Ahmed identified different scales. He identified 15 different scales that the poetry is written in. His student al-Akhfash came and identified the 16th one, which is what this poem is written in, and it's called Bahr al-Khabab. And Khabab in Arabic means it's actually the sound that horses make, their footsteps make as they jog, as they trot about. And so it's giving you a sense of just a quick, it's a hurried kind of scale. For those of you that are interested, keeners like myself, the scale goes like fa'ilun, 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 fa'ilun. So if you apply that to how the poem sounds, it's like اشتدي ازمه تنفرجي قد آذن ليلك بالبلج وظلام الليل له سرج حتى يغشاه أبو السرج. It's a quick scale. Now if you listen to the poem itself being recited by, you could go with the fast singers reciting the poem, or you could go with Abdul Hadi al-Khayyat, is a Moroccan singer that's singing it. Even if you don't understand what the words are, you feel yourself getting lifted just listening to the poem, which is actually just another unbelievable skill from Imam Ibn al-Nahawi when it comes, and that's why he became famous for his poetry. Despite the fact that he was a faqih, he was an usuli, he was a philosopher in his own right, he was a logician, his ability as a poet veiled over all these, it took over all these other skills that he had that people just didn't really see them because he was so good at his poetry. And so even the poem, if you don't understand what it means, you get lifted up just listening to it. And so it's actually just good to have it playing, because you'll find yourself having your anxiety alleviated. Now with that in mind, having covered that little bit of just nice things about the poem itself, what we talked about was the poem itself is just about wanting things to get difficult first, because only through getting difficult, getting the night to its darkest point, will things actually start to light up, will the sun start to rise. Now waiting for Allah's opening is actually a form of ibadah. It's a form of worship that a lot of people don't pay attention to. Waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate the difficulty is in itself an act that will get you rewards and will elevate your state with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not just waiting in a disgruntled, angry type of state. There's, we hear about all types of tribulation that hit people. There was a lady that we were told about. She's had more tribulation than most people have ever seen when you look at her life. Despite that, she's very patient with that. And you need to recognize, being hit with tribulation, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's way of wanting to get you to come closer to Him. Because only through being hit with tribulation and turning about and looking for help and not finding anyone else except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when you start going up to your Creator, to your Maker. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves the ones who are patient. And so, putting you through tribulation is to get you to be patient so that you can gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. Also, gold. The word for in Arabic for tribulation, fitna. It's the word that's used when you heat up gold so much to the point of melting it in order to get the impurities out so that you can get pure gold out. So only through that much intense heat and putting that gold into that type of situation will you get the pure gold out. Only when you're put through the ultimate tribulation will the pure gold come out. Now the question is, do you want that gold to be you coming out and becoming purified and elevated? Or do you want to be the impurity that ends up being discarded? It's a matter of choice here. Now, during times of tribulation, Muslims used to sit and they used to actually recite this poem. During times of tribulation, Muslims used to get together and do a khatam, like they would read the whole Quran together. They used to recite Surah Yasin together. They used to do, like there's another poem called the Dua al-Nasiri. That one, they used to sit down and recite that together when they're under oppression. So, and المنفرجة itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تقنطوا من روح الله. Do not despair from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Muslims used to be very proactive about getting to have that tribulation alleviated from them. Now the companions themselves had a very different worldview from what we have nowadays. When the companions used to be in good times, they used to be worried. Because they knew that after the day comes the night. And so they knew that good times don't last forever. After good times come bad times. And so during the good times, while they did enjoy being in good times, they were still concerned because they knew that something is going to come after that is not going to be so good. But while they were in bad times, they were happy because they knew that after bad times, after the night, the day comes. And so it's a very different, almost counterintuitive way of looking at the world. Now, some cultures, some Arabic cultures, you'll hear something to the extent of when they're laughing and they're having a good time and enjoying themselves, you might hear one of the people, the elders usually would be the ones that do this because the younger generation isn't really aware of these things. But one of the elders will say something like, you know, may Allah make tomorrow a good day, or, you know, hopefully this is not a sign for a bad day to come, or which to the younger generation might sound really strange, like we're laughing, we're having a good time, why are you thinking that we're going to have a bad time coming up? It's an awareness of the state of the world and how things turn back and forth. And so just because you're in a bad time right now, that's not going to last forever, because there's good that comes afterwards. So it's a different worldview. There's two divine names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Out of the many, the 99, over 99 actually there are, but out of the 99 that are known by the majority of Muslims, you have Al-Qabid and Al-Basit. Al-Qabid is the constrictor and Al-Basit is the expander. So through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifests His attributes through the world in a sense that while some people have a constriction in their lives, others have an expansion. While you might have an expansion right now, you might get a constriction come up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a balance in this world. And With constriction comes expansion, with expansion comes constriction. It just goes back and forth, and it's just the manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine names and attributes in the world. And he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَلَيَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you with a little bit of fear. He will test you with hunger. He will test you with loss of wealth, loss of lives, loss of fruits and blessings. But give glad tidings to the patient ones. Only the patient ones will enjoy the benefit of this. Also, you should know that everything that is worth doing usually is difficult. Everything that is worth doing is going to be difficult. And if things are very easy, that means they're not worth doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in Surah Al-Ankabut, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do the people believe that they can just say, oh, we believe, and then they won't be tested? وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِهِمْ. Surely we have tested the ones that have come before them. فَلَا يَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَا يَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would know, would make manifest, will make obvious the ones who are truthful in their belief, and the ones that are just like in another verse, يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. You know, just worships Allah when it's good times, and then when it's bad times you forget about Allah. So you forget about Allah in good times, and you come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in bad times. It's more about like what's your state like here with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He also says, just to remind you that bad times are not going to continue forever. And Surah Al-Sharh, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, the second caliph, he says, لَن يَغْلِبَ الْعُسْرُ يُسْرَيْنِ. That one difficulty is not going to overcome two times of easiness. In Arabic, by the way, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, al-usr, having an alif lam at the beginning of it, means that you've restricted it and you've defined it to a type. And then he says yusra in Surah Al-Sharh. Yusr doesn't have the alif lam, which means that it could be one type of ease, and then he gives you another type of ease. So Allah is telling you that with every difficulty you'll get two types of ease. So this whole poem, as we get into it now again, is basically just correcting your creed, really. It's a creed, it's a dua. The poem has a lot of things that go into it, and if you notice as we go through it, most of it is just all about getting you to have the right creed and the right belief about the world and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about how things run. Once you have that and you build that certainty in your heart, the dua comes at the end of it. You notice that a lot of people make dua and they say like, oh, Allah hasn't answered, Allah hasn't done this. It's because your heart is not in the right state. Your heart is not in the right conviction and doesn't have the right certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom in this world and how things are run. So what Imam Ibn Nahawi does in here, he's telling you at the beginning of the poem, he's setting you up. He's getting you to get to the right creedal formula. Once you have that right creedal formula and once you have the right certainty in your heart, the dua is very simple at the end of the poem. Very simple. And it doesn't take much. But when you make that very simple dua in the right state, it will overcome any dua that you will make that will take forever, but in the wrong state. So that's what this whole poem is about. It's a dua, it's a creedal formula, and it's just getting you into the right kind of perspective. So after he says فاقصد محيا ذاك الارج, he says فلربما فاض المحيا بحور الموج من اللجج. Sometimes there is an overflow of life with great oceans that come to you. If you go back to the line before it, he says ولها أرج محيا أبدا فاقصد محيا ذاك الارج. He says that the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of our masters, are many, they're plenty, and they're there for the free reign of our souls and spirits, and they have a beautiful scent that will bring you to life, always bring you to life. So go to the source of that scent, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's basically turn your attention to the right place. For at times when you get your attention there and you wait for it, it overflows. فلربما فاض المحيا. It overflows. Fada is like when you if you pour water in a cup and then the water just overflows, or in a kettle and the water overflows from the pot, for example. That's how the blessings come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just enough. It overflows. It overtakes you. But you need to be at the right position to receive these things properly. بحور الموج من اللجج. And اللجج is like the when the oceans are hitting, the water is just going up and rising, and it's like lujaj is like the water at the top of the ocean as it's like really overflowing. And so he's telling you that once you get there, you'll get that type of overflow. But you need to turn your attention to your maker to do that, to the source of life. والخلق جميعا في يده فذو سعة وذو حرج. And then he's now telling you a little bit of creed. All creation, not just people, but he's referring to people, but he's saying all creation. والخلق جميعا في يده. All creation is under his dominion, under his power. فذو سعة وذو حرج. Some people have an expanded state, and others have a constricted state. فذو سعة وذو حرج. And that's just letting you know that for you, you might have a difficulty right now. But you need to know something. Somebody has it worse than you. And you are to them ذو سعة. You're the one that has an expanded state. At the same time, when you have an expanded state, you may not be aware that you're actually in a constriction. And you might just be a little bit diluted into and the constriction could be a spiritual constriction. So you need to know that it's all under the dominion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that is random. Things are not just, it's not just happening randomly without any plan or anything like that. It's all creation is under the dominion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's all going based on what He wants it to go. And that's actually what He says in the next line. وَنُزُولُهُمْ وَطُلُوعُهُمْ فَإِلَى دَرَكٍ وَعَلَى دَرَجِ. Their descension, وَنُزُولُهُمْ وَطُلُوعُهُمْ, and their ascension, all of creation, فَإِلَى دَرَكٍ وَعَلَى دَرَجِ. It's either down a level or up a step. And that's telling you that it's all happening at the same time. While some people are being raised up, others are being put down. And while people are being put down, others are raised up. And even at the putting down and the raising up, it's not just going down to the abyss of the bottom of it, or being risen all the way to the top. It's actually at different levels. And so, if you're in a constricted state, you're at a particular level that once you look down, it's like, alright, maybe I'm not so bad. And once you realize that it's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's doing, هو القابض والباسط. He's the one. أن يؤتي الملك من يشاء. He's the one that gives dominion to whoever He pleases. وينزع الملك ممن يشاء. And He takes it away from whoever He pleases. He's the one that's running the show. This is really what Islam is about. It's about submitting completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's basically getting your mind at ease, relaxing. If you're in a difficult state right now, it's Allah's doing. It's going to pass. All you need to do is have patience. Turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognize that you're actually being purified and that you're being brought closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَعَائِشُهُمْ وَعَوَاقِبُهُمْ لَيْسَتْ فِي الْمَشْيِ عَلَى عِوَجِ. And their current lives and their ends, the creation, are not happening randomly without a plan. لَيْسَتْ فِي الْمَشْيِ عَلَى عِوَجِ. It's not like meshi, and this is the interesting analogy that he's giving you, the metaphor. Meshi happens like walking, takes step by step. And he's telling you here that even in the single steps that are taken in the people's lives and in their deaths and in their hereafter, everything is not happening randomly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan for everything and everyone. And nothing is happening without His knowledge. And nothing is happening without His making it go that way. And so don't think that what's going on is random. There is a purpose behind everything. There is a meaning behind it all. It's like the other poet says, إنما الكون معان قائم بالصور من أدرك هذا كان من أهل العبر. This whole creation is just meaning. It's all meanings that are being erected up in the form of images. And the ones that recognize that, من أدرك هذا كان من أهل العبر, would be from the ones of discernment, the people of discernment. And abra is like just having an ability to discern and get the meaning out of it. Only through that would you get. And abra is like a tear, actually, which is an interesting thing. It's when you are able to discern and see the meaning, that's when you start getting the tear out of it. So ومعائشهم وعواقبهم ليست في المشي على عوج حكم نسجت بيد حكمت ثم انتسجت بالمنتسج. حكم نسجت, they're divine wisdoms. Nusijat is what someone does when they knit, when they're knitting. حكم نسجت بيد حكمت, by a divine power that has decreed it to be as so. ثم انتسجت بالمنتسج. Al-muntasiji is referring to the person. And intasajat means that it's become knitted with the individual. These divine, so what he's saying here, Ibn al-Nahawi, he says that all these events that are taking place, the things that are causing you this constriction and anxiety and just a worry, they're actually divine wisdoms that have been decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they've been knitted within your being. They're actually part and parcel of your life. And so you need to understand. And hikmah, wisdom, is putting the thing in its right place. That's what makes something a wisdom. That's what makes someone wise. A wise person is a person who knows how to put the things in their right places. And so Ibn al-Nahawi is telling you that what's going on to you right now, rather than going, why me, O Lord, this is actually something that is meant to happen. And it's a wisdom in its own right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's best for you. It's your reaction to it that determines whether you'll get the benefit from it and you'll get the wisdom out of it, or you will lose out on that. فإذا اقتصدت ثم انعرجت فبمقتصد وبمنعرج. So know that if it's become constricted and if it's become restricted and even bent to your eye, to your discernment, you just think that things are not going the right way, they've been restricted a little bit and things are diverting into a way that you don't want them to be, فبمقتصد وبمنعرج. It was meant to be restricted, and it was meant to actually go in that direction, which is the right direction. You may not think that it's the right direction, but it's the right direction. You may think that it's restricted, but it's not restricted. It's actually done so that it fits in with al-muntasiji, with your life, the way it needs to go. شهدت بعجائبها حجج قامت بالأمر على الحجج. It has these wisdoms, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what to give each individual exactly, and there's an appropriateness to everything. And so He tells you then, these wisdoms are wondrous. شهدت بعجائبها حجج, and they become a proof. قامت بالأمر على الحجج. Over time they've become the matter pointing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These wisdoms, the things that happen, it's like we say hindsight 2020. When you look back and you go like, oh my God, had this not happened the way it did. And at the time you were just frustrated. But only after, later on, you look back and you go, subhanallah, it's amazing that it worked out this way, and it wouldn't have worked out any other way. You would want it to work out that way. And that is actually a proof showing the purposeness of everything. It's the purposefulness of it all. And it's something that makes you kind of turn your hands and go like, that's amazing. It's a wondrous thing. I'm just trying to remember the lines from another poem. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. I'm gonna have to remember it for next time, inshallah. But it's a beautiful couplet that talks about how everything is basically pointing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, I'll look it up and go over it again in the third lesson. But you need to, now that we've gone a little bit into the poem now, we're just going to go through it again, and hopefully by now you'll get what it means. So he starts it off with اشتدي ازمه تنفرجي قد آذن ليلك بالبلج وظلام الليل له سرج حتى يغشاه أبو السرج وسحاب الخير له مطر فإذا جاء الإبان تجي وفوائد مولانا جمل لسروح الانفس والمهج ولها ارج محيا أبدا فاقصد محيا ذاك الارج فلربما فاض المحيا ببحور الموج من اللجج والخلق جميعا في يده فذو سعة وذو حرج ونزولهم وطلوعهم فعلى درك وعلى درج ومعائشهم وعواقبهم ليست في المشي على عوج حكم نسجت بيد حكمت ثم انتسجت بالمنتسج فإذا اقتصدت ثم انعرجت فبمقتصد وبمنعرج شهدت بعجائبها حجج قامت بالأمر على الحجج. I hope that you guys are getting the beauty of this poem and the lines that are being recited. It really just takes you back. And I think we've covered enough with that. Inshallah, the next one will go into it a little bit more and we'll continue on. I don't want to give you too much. I want you to really take it in and to go back and just give you enough so that you take it in, you understand what it means, and then give you some time to reflect upon all these lines and just really get the meaning out of it, because it's a really beautiful poem. And basically, and take it and apply it so that you actually change your perspective and your worldview to have an Islamically appropriate worldview, really is what it is. And it's something that calms you down. Nothing will bother you after this. Jazakumullahu khairan. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment, post a response or a question. Also, you can just private message me or anything like that. You're more than welcome to do so. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.